I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark, the Department of Justice, and quite possibly the President of the United States himself. Somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. Ms. Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause.
Stephen A. Smith just dropped a shocker that should have every WNBA exec on edge. He's moved past griping about missed whistles. He's calling for federal investigators to examine what's happening to Caitlin Clark. And yes, we're talking about the same Caitlin Clark who single-handedly sparked a 601% surge in merchandise and tripled franchise valuations. The same star who pulled in 1.29 million All-Star votes, yet somehow was ranked 9th among guards by fellow players. Something smells off, and Stephen A. thinks Washington needs to get involved. If you agree, the feds should step in. Comment. Protect Caitlin Clark. Let's roll. The golden child now in her sophomore season, who finished top 4 in MVP voting last year, led the league in assists, and serves as a galvanizing force who's done wonders for the WNBA. If fans are watching her take physical punishment on the court at a rate that's glaringly and flagrantly out of line with everyone else's treatment, you think that man's going to stay quiet? You want to know what makes this absolutely maddening? Start with the dollars. Caitlin Clark didn't just arrive, she became the league's economic engine overnight, driving revenue that should make her untouchable. The numbers are staggering. Exponential merch growth, Fever viewership up threefold, overall league viewership doubled, team values tripled, and League Pass subs up 366%. These aren't minor upticks. They're the kind of seismic gains leagues dream about. Caitlin Clark has done for the women's game what Michael Jordan once did for the NBA. She made it more valuable, more watchable, and more marketable. Yet, instead of shielding a transformational star, league leadership has shrugged at the non-stop targeting of Ms. Clark, treating its greatest asset like a PR nuisance. That stance could morph into a legal liability for the WNBA. Clark pulled in more than $11 million in endorsements and triggered a 613% spike in engagement with the league's app figures the WNBA hadn't seen in ages. We're looking at a player who singularly shifted women's basketball's financial landscape. Every metric you can name ballooned right alongside her rise. Since she entered the league last year, Ms. Clark's impact has been nothing short of seismic. Merchandise sales jumped 601%. Indiana Fever viewership surged 170%. The franchise's value tripled. League Pass subscriptions climbed 366%. App engagement rose 613%. And her endorsement haul topped $11 million. She's the economic motor pushing the league forward. But here's where it turns ugly. Instead of safeguarding their golden goose, the league let her absorb punishment at unprecedented rates. The stats are damning. Clark accounted for 17% of all flagrant fouls last season, double any other player's share. Let that marinate for a second. Let me tell you the kind of headline lines Trump would lead with. Sophie Cunningham told the Wall Street Journal, Caitlin Clark's teammate, that Indiana Fever's star and the face of the league isn't being protected. Rebecca Lobo, ESPN analyst, what'd she say? Every single one of those plays against Caitlin Clark was a foul. Now think about that. The athlete generating the most money is taking the hardest hits, and somehow the whistles keep getting swallowed. You're watching defenders take cheap shots at the woman who tripled franchise values. You're seeing contact that should be flagrant ones get ignored when it's Clark. The pattern screams at you once you study the tape. Hard fouls that merit flagrants. Obvious targeting that gets waved off. Late hits met with nothing but play on. The league's most valuable star was treated like a practice dummy while officials looked away. By the way, when she missed this year's All-Star weekend because she was hurt, yes, a result of all the roughhousing folks mentioned, ratings dipped 36%. They still topped 2 million viewers, but last year was over 3 million. The drop happened because she wasn't on the floor. I told y'all Candace Parker tried to tell y'all. Rebecca Lobo's been trying to tell y'all the goose that lays the golden eggs, the tide that lifts all boats. This isn't coincidence. It's a pattern that exposes how badly the WNBA has mishandled its most valuable asset. When one revenue driver is eating double the flagrant fouls of anyone else, something is deeply broken. So how did a league let jealousy and resentment trump basic business logic? How do you watch someone rewrite your economic playbook and then fail to shield her from systematic targeting? You know what Gino Orma said? He said she's being targeted. I don't recall that when Michael Jordan first hit the NBA, guys lined up to beat him down. It was really just the Detroit Pistons who tried to do that. Then came the New York Knicks under Pat Riley, Ewing, Anthony Mason, Xavier McDaniel, Charles Oakley plus John Starks, and later Derek Harper, and the rest. Stephen A. Smith didn't simply blast the WNBA. He cracked open a door that should scare Commissioner Cathy Engelbert and every league exec when Stephen A. pivots from sports takes to urging federal action. It signals a crisis beyond basketball. Ms. Clark's targeting could reflect a culture of unequal treatment, and the evidence gives reasonable grounds for a federal civil rights probe. Am I just making this up now? Remember, I said this months ago. Remember, I spoke about the Cheryl Swoopises of the world and others. Remember, I pointed all that out. Remember, I talked about the roughhousing. The Wall Street Journal ran a blistering op-ed arguing that the federal government should investigate Clark's treatment as a civil rights matter. This wasn't some random blogger making noise. It was one of America's most respected publications, putting the WNBA on notice. The piece didn't sugarcoat what it saw happening to the league's biggest star. It said this would mirror the EEOC's investigation into Erica Ham's pregnancy discrimination claims against the WNBA and her team. Congress and the Labor and Justice Departments would be justified in digging in. Stephen A. Smith fully that on air, saying federal investigators have legitimate reasons to step in. He's not just talking blown calls anymore, he's describing systemic patterns that could violate workplace protection laws. When someone with his reach and legal savvy says there's a case, people pay attention. You don't think Caitlin Clark could become an issue of national, maybe international, and definitely federal significance? You don't think so? We're no longer in the realm of sports chatter. We're talking potential Justice Department action and congressional oversight. And you know what happens when federal agencies start probing internal emails and decision-making. Everything changes instantly. Every email gets pored over. Every meeting gets dissected. Every policy choice gets put under a microscope. Senator Jim Banks's 2024 letter to WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert demanded answers about Ms. Clark's treatment. Congress and the administration should insist on answers from league brass. Investigate officiating and internal communications. Hold hearings and require genuine reforms. That's in the Wall Street Journal. The Labor Department should review league protocols for workplace safety. If evidence shows discrimination or retaliation, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division must act. If leaders sit on their hands, Congress should revisit the WNBA's special breaks, including antitrust and broadcast considerations. Auditing referee performance with NBA-style last 2-minute reports would be a meaningful first step to rebuild trust. The core argument centers on workplace safety failures and differential treatment, the same legal frameworks used in major civil rights cases. Federal investigators won't care about locker room beefs or veteran-rookie dynamics. They'll care whether someone's workplace rights are being violated through targeted abuse and inadequate protection. And look, 17 flagrant fouls were called on opponents for hammering Caitlin Clark. That's nearly twice the figure for any other player in the league. There's evidence suggesting she's being treated unfairly. Now consider what this means. Operationally, federal investigators could subpoena ref communications, front office decisions, and internal player safety policies. They could demand to know why the league's most valuable player absorbed double the flagrants of anyone else. They could assess whether the WNBA fostered a hostile work environment by failing to respond adequately to obvious targeting. That was the opening salvo. I'm not asking you this is Stephen A. Baby. I'm telling you, it's the first shot. It's no accident this is happening. Soon after, WNBA players foolishly, as Candace Parker noted, wore those shirts. Pay us what you owe us. Poking the league, with CBA talks looming. Once federal investigators start probing systemic targeting and hostile work environment claims, the WNBA's troubles get far bigger than basketball.